And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace. We are brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. Remember back in the day when you could be mobile, hostile, and agile, and now you're dealing with chronic pain? If that's you, there may be a solution one step away. No guarantees, but over the years, over 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start from Relief Factor. Over 70% of them have seen such great results that they stuck around with the product after those 3 weeks to keep those results going. So why don't you see if you don't see a difference in 3 weeks or less when you go to relieffactor.com and try it out. It's the drug-free supplement created by physicians who can prescribe drugs. And they created this as a means by which to attack the inflammation in your joints that's the likely cause of the symptom of your chronic pain. So again, it's just $20. What do you have to lose to see if you don't see a difference in 3 weeks or less when you go to relieffactor.com? Again, that is relieffactor.com. All right, coming up on today's show, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation will join us. Daniel Horowitz will be here for the final segment of the program. In between, we will play buy, sell, or hold starting at the bottom of this hour. But let's get it going with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the most accomplished vice president in history. Why? Let's ask Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Since the Dobbs opinion, the way that she has rallied women and friends of women, also called men, around this country on the issue of abortion and just taken it home. First vice president in history to visit an abortion clinic. Go get them.
Elsewhere, Democrats are continuing to coalesce around Kamala Harris. Here's Chuck Schumer.
So now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to.
Oh, and how could I forget? We have proof of life for Joe Biden. Here he is in Dover, Delaware, before heading back to the White House yesterday. $10 to the poll jar. A new Reuters poll is being shared widely, showing Kamala Harris somehow, suddenly, beating Donald Trump by 2 points nationwide. That poll sampled Democrats at +6. A manhunt was underway in Hancock, Michigan earlier this week for a man on an ATV who was believed to be involved in a string of politically motivated vandalism and a hit and run against an 80-year-old man who was placing a Donald Trump sign in his yard. A day after that string of crimes, a 22-year-old man called into the Hancock Police Department in Michigan to turn himself in and requested someone pick him up from his residence. When police arrived, they found the man dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. A remarkably wicked story from Michigan's Upper Peninsula. An update on one of the few objectively good things to come from the Biden administration. A federal judge yesterday refused to block the Federal Trade Commission's banning of non-compete employment agreements. The Biden administration instructed the FTC earlier this year to ban the practice of employers enforcing strict non-compete clauses in most employment agreements, meaning workers have greater freedom of employment if they want to move on from their current jobs to another in a related field. The FTC estimates around 1 in 5 U.S. workers have signed a non-compete at some point in their careers. And finally, is this the messaging Republicans need to settle on? This is a digital campaign ad on behalf of Republican Pennsylvania Senate candidate Dave McCormick against his Democratic challenger, Bob Casey.
Kamala Harris is inspiring and very capable. The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
The nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes.
What is the solution for voters in the fossil fuel industry?
Giving the workers an ability to transition. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented and cross the border as criminals. That's correct.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime across the border without documentation.
Abolish ICE. Yeah, is that a position you agree with?
And we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Outdated, it is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What would people
Yes.
to reduce red meat specifically?
Yes.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
So for people out there who like their insurance, well, they don't get to keep it.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
I am opposed to any policy that would deny any human being public health, period.
The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
We did it, Joe.
Brutal. And that's what happened while we were away.
Unfortunately, I am not permitted the desire to express this forthcoming thought very often in this era when talking about Republicans. But that is outstanding messaging. And that should be a harbinger, a Rosetta Stone for what will come the rest of the way if indeed it is Kamala. We'll talk more about that here in a minute after we talk first about Patriot Mobile. They are the proud sponsors of Aaron's Montage today. They are on the leading edge, the cutting edge of building the parallel economy that we need. So when it's possible, we can stop giving money to people who hate us. It's not, unfortunately, in many industries. But one industry where it is right now is with an industry we all need, and that's our mobile phones. Make the switch today. You'll get an outstanding U.S.-based customer service team. They're always available for you. They'll also make sure when you go to make the switch, they'll make it as flexible for you as possible. If you want to keep your phone, you can upgrade it if you want. You can keep your number, switch your number, whichever you choose to do. If you're a veteran or first responder, let them know when you go to make the switch. They've got extra ways to say thank you for your service, and all of us can get 30 days for free. If you use the offer code Steve, 30 days for free, a free month of service today when you use the offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, let's discuss what is in Aaron's montage. The level of cringe here is high, very high. I mean, Chuck Schumer with his own please clap moment. Jeb Bush blushed at that.
Well, Kamala had her own please clap moment the other day, too.
Yes, she did. But she lives in a world of cringe, okay? I mean, cringe is her native tongue, okay? Elizabeth Warren, hey, what are her main accomplishments? She's the first woman to visit a place where babies are murdered and dismembered. As we were going to air, there is a report on MSNBC that Pete Buttigieg is a potential candidate for her running mate. Please do this. Please do this. We've reached the saturation point of the rainbow jihad. We're at the point of diminishing returns now. Numbers comprehensively on that have gone down across the board. You've already won over everybody already who needed to show they were part of supposedly the civil rights cause of the era. You've got them all, okay? Everybody else is just sick and bleep and tired of the whole thing at this point. So yes, run on that. Go and tell people who can't afford a new mortgage because a 30-year new mortgage in America is 100% higher than it was 4 years ago. Run and tell them, but it's okay that you can't afford a reliable pre-owned vehicle because I visited an abortion clinic and my other guy likes anal sex from other guys. You already have every one of those voters. Every one of those voters that will respond to that message, you already have. Todd and I were talking before the show. If we were permitted to draft off of their team, the two people to represent them to the country, those are like the two people we'd pick. They're not really good at this. I mean, they're not capable proxies. And as you put it, Todd, you're talking about a ticket of the two people who were so disappointing when they were tried out in the 2020 primary that the Democratic Party had to necromance Joe Biden when he was already in the early stages of dementia back then, as we were pointing out during that entire primary. We were seeing him in Iowa constantly, and we're like, this is not the same guy. And we just saw that continue to decelerate or accelerate, depending on how you want to look at it, through the course of the next 4 years. But we also need to understand what we are up against here. And I need a ruling on the poll jar. If we're discussing this in the context of what is happening in broader cultural, spiritually, but not necessarily to analyze an outcome, does the poll jar still apply? Or should we just say it's for a good cause?
It's
so
for
suck
a
it up
good
and put
cause.
$10 in there.
It's for a good cause.
Okay, we'll just do that. All right.
I say we take that jar and it's had its time and we move on.
You think that? Wow.
Yeah.
For you to say that now gives me pause to think maybe I should consider that position. Okay. Because I hadn't thought about it. I mean, if you're there. Anyway. Go ahead.
I think with this turning of the page to Kamala, I think the amount of time you might have to talk about it in the light of it just being a full-on demonic construct now might be necessary.
Yep.
I think the money has been raised. I think it's... my official title is still show editor.
You are, yes. Or
I think we need
show ombudsman. Yes.
I think we need to edit the poll jar.
All right, let's discuss that amongst ourselves then, moving forward. Let's, as opposed to on the air, as we are right now. So, understand.
Full disclosure.
Understand what we are up against. So I told you if it's her, you are going to, or no matter who it is, you're going to see a PR offensive unlike anything you've ever seen that would make Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift last year look subtle. Okay. It is increasingly likely she is going to be their pick. Because the idea that 72 hours ago Kamala Harris had the highest negatives of any vice president since we've been measuring this. Dan Quayle, hello. Since we've been measuring this, okay, highest unfavorables of any vice president ever. And 72 hours later, she is a polling ray of sunshine.
You're talking yourself into my point right now.
I probably am going to talk myself into it. Understand the signs of the times of what is happening here. And I've mentioned this book many times over the years. I'll mention it again because it doesn't get enough credit. A great book written about 18 years ago called The Marketing of Evil by David Capellian. You should go back and read it. It is, I've talked before about how After the Ball from 1988, which is out of print, they don't want you to read that. You have to go get confiscated PDF pamphlet copies of it now because they don't want you to know what their game plan was. But After the Ball is the my struggle of the Rainbow Jihad. And everything that's in that book, it lays out exactly what it is they are going to do and what exactly they did to our culture. Okay? If you go back and read David Capellian's The Marketing of Evil, a lot of the things we have seen in this era. Now, David wrote this before social media became ascendant. And it's only made what he forecasted in that book back in 2005 or 6. It's only made it even more prophetic. And what he discusses in this book is he uses the term jamming. And I'll just give you a very practical example. Jamming is what all the media did to Donald Trump to get him to shut the government down. Jamming is what they just did to Joe Biden to get him to move aside. And it is when you guys have maybe seen that clip of all the local news outlets, and they're all collaged together, and they're all saying, this is a danger to our democracy. That's jamming. It's when Lord Nefarious sends the edict out, new talking points just dropped, hits the Thanos snap, and every one of his outlets all start saying the exact same thing. And it doesn't matter what they said before. It doesn't matter that the New York Times told you a month ago that you were a right-wing conspiracy theorist and guilty of cheap fakes if you were questioning the president's mental state or that he may have to step aside. And then 2 weeks later, the New York Times is telling you because of the president's mental state, he has to step aside. It doesn't matter if you're Axios running a story today from a writer saying that Kamala Harris, the right is criticizing Kamala Harris for being something she's never been, border czar. And that exact same writer literally wrote stories about how she was appointed border czar 2 years ago. None of that matters. New orders dropped. You're just following orders from the spirit of the age. And they then leverage all of their platforms in a singular message. And then they do this in comments sections, which aren't as much of a thing like on blogs and stuff anymore. Now it replies in your social media, for example. Okay. And they do all this to make you think no one else thinks like this. You're completely isolated. And you couldn't possibly oppose this force of nature. So if they can't get you to sell your soul, at least just stay quiet about it. Exactly. Look at the polls. Exactly. Okay. They were the originators of that. Yes. It's like get rid of the jar again. So the fact that they're already busting out with fake polls indicates to me that they have huddled together and determined that the collateral damage of having to go through this again just isn't going to be worth it. And I mean, this is just the prologue of what is coming. Between the convention and that first debate, you have never seen the kind of jamming of publicity, promotion of one singular figure like you are about to see.
Mamala cometh.
Yes. I mean, Anthony Fauci is going to be like, man, I wish I could have gotten a piece of that. All right. And that Reuters poll that Aaron mentioned, and he mentioned that they had a +6 Democratic sample. I want to make sure that you guys are smart. Do not automatically dismiss a poll. Okay, we did this in 2012, the whole skewed polls thing. Remember that? Well, the polls are showing more Democrats are going to vote than Republicans, and that can't be right. And so therefore the polls are fake. Actually, it can be right, and the polls weren't fake. They were actually, 2012 was one of the most accurate polling cycles you've ever actually had. All right? Polls do not just, when they're done properly, do not just measure a moment in time in a horse race, but they also will give you trends and tell you, where the intensity is at. All right? In most elections in America, we don't have a 50-50 split of turnout between Republicans and Democrats. In fact, that never happens. All right? In one election or the other, one side's vote turns out more than the other, and most of the time, the side whose vote turns out more than the other wins. The one exceptions to this were the Reagan era, where Democrats turned out several points more than Republicans in both his elections, but he won overwhelmingly, thus creating the term Reagan Democrats. Yeah. Now, we were also not nearly as balkanized of a country back then either. So, a Jimmy Carter as a Democrat from Georgia could win a southern state, and a Republican from, could win California, and Reagan did twice convincingly. Okay. So different era then. We're way more polarized, and now to the point of balkanized now. Okay. So we don't typically see those kinds of crossover margins. But typically, midterm elections, for example, under Obama, Republican turnout was several points higher than Democrat turnout, and Republicans won. And then in the presidential elections with Obama, Democratic turnout was points higher than the Republicans, and Obama won. All right. So don't automatically rule out a poll because one side is more sampled than another. Because even if they're done properly, that also measures voter intensity. I mean, we saw this, for example, during the primary. Trump's voters were the most fired up, and they were the ones responding to these polls and giving him these huge leads in the primary. They're the ones who showed up. And then where was Republican turnout everywhere else in the party other than Trump's base? Where was it? Dead. Everyone else in the GOP base, the turnout was anemically low. In Iowa, we had an all-time low, 14% caucus turnout. So the polls were absolutely oversampling MAGA voters and giving Trump that lead, but they also therefore correctly gauged that the MAGA voters were the ones that were the most engaged in the process compared to other wings of the Republican Party, libertarians, traditional conservatives, moderates, neocons, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So don't do that. You'll get fooled if you do that. All right. What you need to look at is when they're oversampling, how do they justify that, and what is their outcome? Okay. The Reuters poll has Democrats at +6. To put that in perspective for you, the biggest presidential win the Democratic Party has had in a presidential election since 1964, when LBJ mopped the floor with Barry Goldwater, was Barack Obama in 2008. That year, the presidential electorate was +7 Democrat, +7. So what Reuters is telling you is that a woman whom 72 hours ago was the most unpopular vice president we've ever polled, who could not last until the first... Every one of us within the sound of my voice had as many Democrat delegates in the 2020 Democratic primary as Kamala Harris did. The three of us, all of you listening right now, everyone within the sound of my voice secured as many delegates in the 2020 Democratic primary as Kamala Harris. So a woman that has not won any meaningful elections anywhere on her own outside of Senate elections in a state where Democrats can get, the Linton Todd's navel okay, and any flavor of salty vinegar he loves, elected and overwhelmingly, okay? She now is getting Obama levels of turnout of Democrats? No. And the further clue of that is that they only have her at 44%. If the electorate is plus 6 Democrat, I promise you, Kamala Harris or any other Democrat is not getting just 44%. That's not happening. To put that in further perspective, I just told you that Reuters is claiming Kamala Harris is going to do better with Democrat turnout than Bill Clinton did either times he ran and won. Just, that's not happening in any of the 9 realms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not occurring. Not happening. That thing is as cooked as your Thanksgiving turkey, okay? Before the Bumpus's dogs lay into it. That's just not happening. But the stage is being set here for what? For what? For what is the stage being set here for?
Saving democracy, Steve?
We are going to not just save it, Todd. We're going to fortify the bleep out of it. Okay? Fortified AF. Fortified as frack. That's what we're going to do. Okay? The problem that the Democrats have had this entire time, and when I say this entire time, since June 27th when the world turned, okay? With the problem they've had since June 20, there was this election cycle before June 27th, and before June 27th, the entire narrative of the cycle was a referendum on Donald Trump and whether you want to vote for him again. And he's a convicted felon, and he's this, and he's that, and he blah, 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 blah. After June 27th, the paradigm shifted radically, 180 degrees. And it became, for the first time, a referendum on a sitting president. And before we even got to Biden's unpopular policies, which already had him with like a 37% approval going into that debate, now he's not even deemed competent for the job. And that's how you end up with a 1932, 1980 level of loss. It's not just that Herbert Hoover and Jimmy Carter's policies did not work, but they are now seen by the public as incompetence. Cautionary tales. If you're from the greatest generation or a boomer, until Jimmy Carter, everyone didn't want to be the next Hoover, right? No one wanted to be the next Hoover. That was the cautionary tale, the ultimate example of presidential failure, right?
Yes.
From 1980 on, so now if you're a boomer or a Gen Xer like you and I, who is the cautionary tale from that time forward? Jimmy Carter. No one wants to be the next Jimmy Carter. To the point he's not even getting like primetime speaking slots at Democratic conventions, all right? He needed to rebrand himself, got into charity work with Habitat for Humanity, had to get away from politics for a while. Democrats had to completely reinvent themselves. The Republicans didn't win another national election in America after Hoover until they were able to nominate maybe America's greatest war hero since George Washington, Dwight Eisenhower. That's what happens to your brand when you get labeled, when the face of your brand isn't incompetent. It takes multiple cycles to dig out of that. And that leaves them without a narrative to fortify the election again. No one's going to believe, after what they just saw on that stage, that guy got 82 million votes. No one's believing that, except the people who want to and would believe anything they're selling. And that's about, 47% of America probably, okay? But that's not enough for them to win. That's why they had to make the move. They don't have a narrative to fortify the election. Now what they're trying to do is create that narrative. And they just need to have the polls within what I used to call the margin of cheating. And let's face it, okay? Again, every standard bearer leader comes with their own baggage, right? Okay? We've talked about that before. Trump does a hell of a job destroying media narratives for us. He's done that since he came down the escalator in 2015.
Yes.
All right. He maybe is the best Air Force commandant the right's ever had. Fair? Okay? But is he the general you put in charge of the infantry, to do the house-to-house, street-to-street combat?
You're describing the reasons why I was 50-50 and planned on being for until the end. Yes.
No, he's not. In fact, he doesn't even seem that interested in it. His team, basically, I think, just assumes you don't need that anymore in the modern era of politics. You just need to win out up here at the meta level and stuff filters down organically. I pray they're right about that, okay? Because I'll tell you, in Iowa, he had the third best organization in the state, and it was a distant third. And the amount of reports I got from people who went to caucus precincts on caucus night that there was no Trump signage, no Trump organization there all over the state of Iowa was everywhere, all right? Particularly in suburbs. Now, organic energy level overwhelmed everybody else, but can you do that nationally in a general election, okay? And because we know that they are going to have boots on the ground in all these urban counties, literally just dropping ballots, harvesting like a mother and bussing people in and getting extensions for reasons from federal judges to keep the spigot going until they get what they want, right? We've all lived through this. So all they're trying to do is make her credible enough so they can fortify this thing at the end here in 3.5 months. And, well, you know, all the polls were in the margin for error and we just eked this thing out everywhere. What a come from behind win, okay? And this really, again, will come down to this is not different than what was done with Biden. Just as there was going to be a moment they'd have to show this person to all of the American people to see if they could actually close the sale. The same thing. So they hid this guy for 3 years, right? But eventually he was going to have to take the stage at advanced age and advanced stages of dementia and stand up there in the middle, for him, at the middle of the night. But they've been calling a lid for Biden at 1 p.m. for the last 2.5 years, okay? So he's going to have to stand up there at 9, 10 o'clock Eastern time and show he can lead, and he couldn't do it, right? Okay? Mm-hmm. She is eventually... They can put all the charm offensive in there they want. They can put everything in there they want. But if that debate takes place as scheduled in early September or another time place later on in the campaign, eventually Kamala Harris is going to have to come there on her own and show 100 million people watching and Americans watching that she is the person that you heard all these narratives and everything about, right?
Yes.
And if she can't, the whole thing will souffle in the oven right there, just like it did with Joe Biden. But until we get to that point, what is coming, the fakeness of it is both real and spectacular. All of the actual reporting that the media did for the last 3 weeks to push Biden out, the factory settings have been reset. We're back to where things were June 26th and from every day heretofore. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, eventually, she's the one that has to close the sale. Eventually, she's the one that has to go there in front of 100 million people, stand next to Donald Trump, and close the sale. Yes, I'm at least reasonably within the ballpark of this massive, world-renowned level charm offensive that you have been given about me. I'm at least in the margin of that, somewhere orbiting it. Or she'll faceplant. But that's all that this is about. This is about looking for a narrative that allows them to fortify this thing yet again. Your thoughts, guys?
Yeah, know your Orwell. It's real, it's spectacular, and they always find a way to dial it up to 11. If I can help you by giving you something to remember it's what I've told you before. The lie is going to be the point. On steroids, it's as true as it ever was before.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a particularly new phenomenon. It's just a new manifestation. Mm-hmm. They have been fortifying elections my entire life, mm-hmm. and really most of you guys' lives as well, and you're 20 years older than I am. They fortify elections all the time. They've always had the media on their side, and that's typically the way that things are covered very favorably towards Democrats in the spirit of the age. That's how they were fortifying elections when I was a kid. Now they're doing it, a different manifestation. Now they're doing it with ballots and harvesting ballots and things of that nature. It's just a different manifestation of the same old fortification. But again, they need the air cover in order to justify that. And that's what you're seeing here. So it's really just different frosting on the same cake.
Amen. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, and again, talking about building the parallel economy. You can apply that to your investments, your retirement, your portfolio as well. And our friends at Constitution Wealth will help you do that. If you are trying to be the kind of consumer where you're not, if you can avoid it anyway, giving money to people directly who hate you, why not apply the exact same thing to your investments, your retirement, your portfolio? Our friends at Constitution Wealth can help you do exactly that, to make sure you're not helping to bankroll these exact ESG, DEI schemes that, frankly, the best you could say, the best we can say at this point is that these schemes nearly got former President Donald Trump killed. That's like the best you could say. That's the best case. The best case scenario is that these people's policies nearly got Trump killed. That's the best thing you could say. And then every other possibility of what transpired on January 13th that's your start point of most optimistic scenario and works its way, well, I was going to say up, but we're really talking down, if you know what I'm saying. Can you hear me?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Works its way down from there, okay? So if you want to make sure you're not funding that stuff, all right, you don't have to. I mean, you can be profitable and prophetic. Your values can also line up with your investments, and they'll help you do that at Constitution Wealth right now. So get lined up with an investment advisor, a financial planner who shares your value system. Take action today. Visit constitutionwealth.com/blaze and sign up for a free consultation today. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation today at constitutionwealth.com/blaze. All right, with that, let's get to this week's buy, sell, or hold. Now, I never see these. I will tell you, late last night, the wife looked at some of the submissions you received, Aaron. She did not tell me what any of them were. Her responses, though, were, "Oh boy." That's what she said to me. So I look forward to seeing what is within the samples that we will partake of here shortly, given what's transpired in this country over the last couple of weeks. You know the drill. You guys have made your submissions to Aaron. Todd, you and I have not seen them. We have no idea which ones Aaron's going to show us and which ones he's not, what order he's even going to show those to us in. You and I will decide on each one. Are we going to buy it? Are we going to sell it? We are permitted to use the hold, okay? We are permitted to use the hold, but see what I did there. But if you use your hold, then you have shamed yourself and frankly, your future progeny. They will be ashamed of you because you are a listless vessel of emasculation. And at that point, you have to discover for yourself what Pete Buttigieg's greatest accomplishment actually is. Let's go.
All right, we're going to begin today. We had like upwards of 300 submissions. I took 32. I might even take some more after I go back through them again, so we can go fairly brisk at a fairly brisk pace today.
You say that like, well, listen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we are actually going to begin with
Took me 3 minutes to do the intro, but go ahead. Yes.
One of the two leading Deace meme accounts, and we will end with the other leading Deace meme account in the overtime, because that submission is whatever the moonshine equivalent of vinegar is. That submission, we're saving that for the overtime. I don't think that can go over the air, but we'll begin with Uncontexted 2.
That can't go over the air on this show?
I don't think so.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, but we'll put it in overtime.
Should it go over the air on any show then? All right, go ahead.
Uncontexted Deace 2 Electric Boogaloo has this. Steve has a secret gaming channel on YouTube and Twitch under the gamer tag Pumpkin Spice Apostle 73, where he streams videos of him playing the new College Football 25 game.
I don't, but I might. That's a hella idea. And I love the name Pumpkin Spice Apostle 73. I guarantee you nobody has that. I might go on there right now and see if I can claim that. Name it and claim it!
On a related note, should I...
Pumpkin Spice Apostle 73 is phenomenal.
Should I tell the audience what I told you and Todd during the break?
Yeah, I don't mind. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, Steve and I have a side gig, a YouTube channel where we talk sports. And I typically am just in the back end, the YouTube studio version of that. I'm like never on the front end of that app.
Which gets more views than our actual YouTube channel does, with 3% of the viewership, which tells you how much we're throttled.
Search engine optimization.
Yep. Yeah. And why we needed to start a brand new YouTube channel at Deace Show, by the way. Please go there, our brand new YouTube channel, Deace Show. Subscribe right now.
Yeah, already got thousands of subscribers on the new channel, so that's good.
Yep.
So anyway, I was on the front end for a reason last night, and it was just in a position where I was not looking for this. It was just in a position where I could not see it. And it was the video search history, because apparently Steve's been using that to watch YouTube, and it is the most on-brand Deace search history that you will ever see. There's like videos about the MCU. There's like DC, how to play Dynasty in the new college football, end times prophecy. It was just like all one after the other.
Live sporting events from the 70s with the commercials that I just watch on YouTube late at night when I get bored. Yes.
Next, we go to Brian Snyder. The events of the past month have been such a distraction that people have forgotten about open borders in most issues facing America this election season.
That's
sell.
Go ahead. I was going to buy, but you go first.
You acting like they were paying attention then.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like they'd forgotten. They were really serious. Now they're distracted. Have you not listened to me for like forever? You're too comfortable.
Stay black, Vanta black. That's what you just did. Like you stayed Vanta black. Like you came off the bottom rope. Okay. No. It's worse than that. They weren't paying attention even before this started. This has actually made more people pay attention, which is sad. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Did you guys see the story today? In fact, I want to make sure I get the number real quick. Let me go look this up because I shared this from Bill Malugin over at Fox, who does phenomenal reporting on this. 43 is the number. How many 9/11 hijackers were there? 20, right? Was there 20?
Yeah.
I think it was right around 20. Yeah. Okay. 43 Egyptians crossed illegally into Southern California yesterday. You know, Egypt. For those of you who went to public school, it's that country right on the other side of the Rio Grande. Egypt. You know, it's on the Baja. Egypt's on the Baja right there. I mean, you can easily get lost strolling through downtown Cairo within the California Baja and find yourself in San Diego. Let he who has not thought he was in the midst of Cairo and suddenly ended up in San Diego after a nice weekend on the Baja with too much to drink, cast the first stone.
Egypt, you say? Well, maybe they were the ones who went into the hotel in D.C. where Netanyahu's staying and unleashed the actual locusts and grasshoppers and maggots. Oh, that's on brand.
Also, 50 Indians, and we're not. These aren't Cherokees. India. Right?
Dots, not feathers.
That's also not a border. India's not bordering the Baja either. Okay, you can't walk there from here. Okay, 50 plus Indians, hundreds of Chinese. 50 plus Indians, 43 Egyptians. Just crossed over the border into Southern California, and that was last week.
What nation were they in stripes? Was Bill Murray and company trying to get into?
Yes.
What? But when they're talking about the logistics of it, hey,
yes.
He's talking because he's from Chicago. He's like, border? It's like going over into Wisconsin. Yeah. This is pretty much our southern border now.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, just as
I'm a buy, by the way, but I like to sell answer. I just can't change my answer now. It's a dude code. But
just as we speak, FBI Director Chris Wray speaking in front of Congress, saying we are increasingly concerned about a coordinated foreign terrorist attack in the United States.
You don't say.
Those are great.
By the way, Axios. I mentioned Axios earlier. I gotta correct this. They just issued a correction because I pointed out that Axios is claiming that. A writer for Axios wrote a story this morning claiming that Republicans are attacking Kamala Harris with a title she's never actually had, Borders Are. And that exact same author wrote articles 2 years ago talking about Kamala Harris being named the Borders Are. Okay. Well, now they've taken such heat for this. And again, I don't go to the church of Elon Musk, man. And I wouldn't suggest anybody else do that. Nor would I suggest anybody go to the church of Aaron McIntyre, Todders, and Steve Deace for that matter. Mm-hmm. Okay. But this stuff doesn't happen if Elon Musk doesn't buy Twitter. What I'm about to tell you right now. Never happens in a million years. Okay. Axios just was forced to issue a correction. Editor's note, the article has been updated and clarified to note that Axios was among the news outlets that incorrectly labeled Harris as, quote, border czar back in 2021. That there's no way that kind of stuff happens if Elon Musk doesn't buy Twitter. No way.
Speaking of, there's no way something happens. There's no way the FBI is telling Congress that there's a foreign terrorist threat unless they're the ones who are actually behind the current domestic terrorist threat. So that
takes one to know one, in other words? Yeah.
All right, next. I chose this one just because I love the account name. The Canaanites had it coming has this. The Trump will win big, but the House and Senate will be small majorities of rhinos because Republican voters are too lazy to vote in primaries, and the RNC won't spend the money on congressional seats in the general election.
So I have no idea. There's just too many moving parts to that, and it's July.
Read it one more time, Aaron.
Trump will win big, but the House and Senate will be small majorities of rhinos because Republican voters are too lazy to vote in primaries.
I think that is possible.
I don't think it's impossible, but I also think
because the one thing we have not seen throughout this entire cycle, we saw Joe Biden was polling worse than Democrats were comprehensively. That the generic congressional ballot for Democrats was consistently better than Joe Biden was polling. Okay, so I think that this is possible. And this would be the opposite of what you saw in 2016, when Trump won, but most Republicans actually congressionally performed better than he did. You could see the inverse of that. I think that is possible. And then I think many of the people who do win could be downgrades because, again, we just don't participate in primaries. So if I agree with all of that being a possibility, so I'll buy.
Yeah, I'm just selling. Like our theory, Republicans suffer from ethereal, long-term thinking. Like, let's work on August. Okay, let's work on August.
Tyler Bruder says different bands' best songs. Come Sail Away by Styx. Have You Ever Seen the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Gimme Shelter, Rolling Stones. Bat Out of Hell, Meatloaf. Ordinary World, Duran Duran.
Leave the list up there.
Ordinary World is not Duran Duran's
That's a
best
sell on Duran Duran. I mean, it has to be The Reflex, Hungry Like the Wolf. Has to be one of those two songs. I would even accept if you were hardcore Duran Duran back in the day. Is there something I should know? Highly, highly underrated song. Okay. So if I would even accept if you wanted to get really nerdy on Duran Duran and you said, is there something I should know as your choice? That would be acceptable to me. But to pick Ordinary World over Hungry Like the Wolf or The Reflex, it's a pop culture foul.
I probably went Bat Out of Hell. I probably would say is not Meatloaf. Gimme Shelter.
First of all, name three other, Well, we said Meatloaf, not Molly Hatchet. I misread that. Okay, so
Paradise.
So Paradise by the Dashboard Light. Yeah,
I would give Anything for Love is more recent. Give Me Shelter. That's my favorite Stone song. I can see why others would say something else, but I love that song.
I'm fine with that as a pick. I'd probably go with, even though if Trump made it his campaign song. I often wondered in 2015 if he was trolling us with that. Okay, but I've always thought you can't always get what you want is their best song. But if Give Me Shelter is among their greatest by recognize. So I'm fine with that choice. Have you seen The Rain? I mean,
I don't think that's
to me.
best.
I'd go Bad Moon Rising, Fortunate Son. One of those two. I think it's dramatically superior. Come Sail Away is Styx's signature song,
Probably,
so that's a buy from me. Yeah.
Overall, this is a swing and a miss.
Overall, swing and a miss for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jason Rowland is next. A godless society that's comfortable and largely absent from citizenry permits the spirit of the age to more easily maneuver between strategies, plans to get its same desired outcome.
100% correct. Yeah. We cannot outrun our own worldview. No one can rise above their own worldview. Worldview is destiny.
Todd and I have talked about this. Maybe we've talked about this on the air, but we've talked about this certainly off the air. How in normie America, it's like virtuous to not care about politics.
Correct.
That's like a virtue. Yeah. Like we're above it all. That's just. And I have friends like that as well. That's just no.
I've done, on 75, I've done a lot of walking of this neighborhood in the 18 years I've lived in it anyway. But on 75 hard over the last 73 days, I have done more daily walking of this neighborhood than I ever have. And I have the only political yard sign for a presidential candidate up in this entire neighborhood, and it just went into my yard Saturday, July the 13th. And obviously, I've been doing 75 hard for 73 days. Okay, so mine is the only one up. The only one up. Yeah, I mean, your totally observation there is accurate. Correct. Yes.
Next, we go to Jared Barker. I thought this was pretty clever. Our adversaries, while laughing at us, are also wondering if they're being punked.
In what context?
I get what he's. Well,
I think like
this is too easy.
They can't be this far gone, right?
Oh,
they can't be this disorganized. They can't be this incompetent.
Oh, about us?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I'll sell. I see what you're saying, and it's okay, but I'll sell.
I'll sell because our true adversaries are not Democrats. They're the front. We're dealing with spiritual forces here, malevolent ones, and you're dealing with strongholds and principalities, and they're also responsible or place some responsibility for the position we find our own selves in. They've worked us over to some degree as well. Okay, so I actually think where they're at, they're saying they're more Palpatine here. This is all proceeding exactly as I have foreseen it. Okay, let me tell you,
to move the way they are, they had to just flat out count on that we had reached.
Yes,
because they went all in.
Yes. Yeah. What I think the demonic is probably saying, frankly, is this is working out as we had hoped. Yeah. All right, we got them to nominate the candidate that has the highest negatives that and rally around him and cancel their own primary. We forced Joe into taking this early debate to put him on the stage to see if he could step up or not. Okay, now that doesn't mean that there's not pushback on the other side of the spiritual battle. I'm not saying that they've won every one of these fights. I promise you they didn't have Eileen Cannon getting rid of the documents case the Monday after Trump got shot. They didn't have Crookman missing that shot. You know what I'm saying? They didn't have Trump turning his head to the right so that the bullet grazed his ear. Okay, I'm not saying that they're sovereign or in control. That's not what God is ultimately. But if from their perspective, much of this is actually in the meta working out the way that they had hoped, even if it hasn't always gotten there in the way that they had planned. Okay, more buy, seller, holders next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV. Also live right now on X, Twitter. Hello to all of you watching us there. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. You can like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Getter. You can also, if you wouldn't mind, subscribe, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, our brand new YouTube channel. We had to start all over again, given all the censorship we have faced. Subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel. Please help us to spread the word there. At Deace Show is our new YouTube channel. At Deace Show is where you'll find us there. You can, if you are a podcast listener, leave us a 5-star review if you dig the show. If you don't, then don't. But if you do, please do. And thank you to all of you who already have. You can also hit subscribe, or if we're talking about iTunes, hit follow. And that way, every time that we do one of these shows, it'll line up and show up right there in your podcast feed. And we thank and appreciate all of you that have done that for us too. If you are looking for some great meat to grill here on a summer weekend or any summer night, you're going to appreciate our friends over at Backyard Butchers. They're a Christian conservative Texas-based company dedicated to delivering the best deals in the market on high-quality beef. And your Backyard Butcher's box is going to include all born and raised American beef from ranches right here in the heartland. We're talking grass-fed, grain-finished, and I can attest for you the meat does taste amazing. You've got their phenomenal customer service team made up of stay-at-home moms So, they're organized and getting things done for you as well. All right. They've got over 500,000 happy customers right here in America. So many 5-star reviews online because of how good the meat is and how good their customer service is. And if you want to try them today, go to backyardbutchers.com/Deace. Backyardbutchers.com/Deace. If you try it today, you're going to save 20% off your entire first order. And if you subscribe at any point, you'll get an additional 10% off and free shipping as well. Backyardbutchers.com/Deace. Use the code Deace to get the money off the cost, 20% off. That's again, backyardbutchers.com/Deace. Backyardbutchers.com/Deace. And with that, let's get back to some more buy, sell, or hold, Aaron.
We will continue on with Alex Pfeiffer, who says elected governmental powers will be given over to an artificial intelligence. First, it'll be given at the local level for test trials, but then at the national level. This will lead to the Antichrist, and the Antichrist will be an artificial intelligence. This artificial intelligence will be able to track and control every purchase and movement made by a smartphone or smartwatch. This technology will eventually be implanted and mandated by artificial intelligence.
Buy.
You're a buy on this.
Absolutely. We're trending this way. And folks, this is what I was trying to tell you. And we've had explanations about it before from me about why it went beyond sports. This is instant replay. This is exactly what I was talking about. Our need to just have to have it. Just so ridiculously, robotically perfect because we forgot what it means to be actually human. Why we play the games. You're damn right this is going to happen. Why not? Why not get it right, Steve? We got to get it right. It's good. Short of revival, this is what we want. This is what Aaron says. We resent having to be involved at all. It's Cypher in the Matrix. Ignorance is bliss. You're damn right this is going to happen. And your churches might be the first ones to get on board.
So, can we examine this for a second? You okay with this? Because I get this a lot in my feed, some reference to this. Okay?
Oh, AI in general?
AI as being the Antichrist, basically. All right? So there's actually not a lot we know about the Antichrist in the Bible. Doesn't we know some things, but and there's only a few mentions of this kind of a figure. Okay? And we're not even sure that some of the things that are mentioned that if you're a futurist eschatologically are attributed to the Antichrist are about him or were already fulfilled. Okay. For example, a segment of Daniel that futurists eschatologically often attribute to the future Antichrist is Daniel 11:37. Okay. And in the ESV, which is the translation we're using for Romans, Daniel the prophet writes, and he's writing this 500 something BC. He's writing this. Okay, so he's writing this hundreds of half a millennia before the time of Christ is when Daniel is writing this. He shall pay no attention to the gods of his fathers, or to the one beloved by women. Or have, some of your translations will say have no regard for women. That's often been interpreted as meaning affections for women, but that's probably not actually what Daniel meant. Okay? He shall not pay attention to any other god, for he shall magnify himself above all. That sounds like an Antichrist figure, right? Does that not also sound like Nero? Nero disregarded the gods of his fathers, appointed himself God. Regardless of what, if you think it means erotically, well, he married his male slave in the Senate. Magnified himself above all. Okay, do you see what I'm saying? And Nero's name, by the way, in numerology actually does write out to 666. It does, actually, in numerology. So does Ronald Wilson Reagan's name, by the way. So, lots of famous people's names do, okay, in various forms of numerology. Okay, but that is a section of Scripture that is often attributed to the future coming of an Antichrist. Or if you have the eschatological view of our guest yesterday, Douglas Wilson, he would tell you all those exact same things were true of Nero. And they would have also been true of Nero. Okay, and that who John was likely writing about, because he didn't write in Revelation in 90 or 95 AD as we are taught, but actually wrote it in like 60 or 65 AD, so before 70 AD and the end of the Jewish nation in that era. Okay, that's what people who think like Douglas Wilson from yesterday, that's what he thinks, or Gary DeMar that we did the Evergreen with earlier this year. That's what they think. That's what your church thinks, right? About a lot of this kind of stuff. Okay?
Yeah, it's much closer. Yeah.
All right. So, but let's go ahead and attribute it. I wanted to bring in that context to then say, let's go ahead and just look at it futuristically, because you have a largely futuristic eschatology still,
Yes.
Aaron. Okay. So let's look at this futuristically and say that it is about the man of lawlessness that Paul describes, a central figure that's often been attributed to the Antichrist, although he does not use that word. But the man of lawlessness that Paul is writing to the church in Thessalonica about, a future, man of lawlessness that essentially we have often attributed or ascribed that to be the Antichrist figure. Okay. Is it, which verse is it in Romans where is it? I think it might actually be Romans 13. I'm sorry, Revelation 13. I meant Romans. I've got Romans on the brain. It's Revelation 13 that lays out the Antichrist, okay? The beast, the false prophet, the Antichrist, Revelation 13, okay? Let's assume that all is futuristic. Based on what limited information and scope we get about the Antichrist figure in the scriptures, okay? If we ascribed a futuristic interpretation, and what do I mean by futuristic? It means that it can be true that some of these things were already fulfilled, but they were fulfilled for the point of being foreshadowing of things to come, or they've not been fulfilled. Is that a good definition?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So if that were the case, would an AI meet these kinds of characteristics? Okay, no regards for the gods of the past.
Yes.
Check. Okay. Could an AI cause everyone to have a mark, like what is written about in Revelation 13, in order to buy, sell, or hold, which sometimes we attribute to like a barcode, a QR code? Could an AI do that?
Sure.
Okay. Would an AI have really not even a disregard for gods, but not even pay attention to them at all? That would just be like a foreign concept to an AI, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then could an AI then at that point in time basically be the ghost in the machine to elevate themselves as to use a Marvel cinematic, or actually it's in both the MCU and in Marvel Comics. One of the main villains of the Marvel Comics is what's called the Supreme Intelligence, and there's a alien race of people, and this is essentially who their god is, that they listen to and follow. Yes. Okay, is this Supreme Intelligence? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we're living in a culture where a bunch of grown men are addicted to a video game right now, Steve. You don't think they're going to get addicted to this? Of course not. This is why I've been talking about this all time. It's a replay of the video game stuff. It all is because of this.
We are nowhere close to artificial sentience. In fact, that's kind of a misnomer or a contradiction, a self-contradictory statement. There's either sentience or there's not. In terms of this being a cheap knockoff, an FU to the God who actually created,
like, wouldn't this be the
life.
Ultimate 666? The ultimate, it looks divine, but it's not.
Yes, we are creating our own thing. I can see it in those terms, but until something that we create, which I don't think it's even impossible. I don't think it's possible that humans could create outside of human life something that is sentient. It's still just going to have the imprint of its own makers. It's not actually going to be its own thing. And there's also this as well. The verses that you have cited referring to the Antichrist are using what pronouns? It's not talking about it. It's talking about real masculine pronouns, which means I would think that it's actually human. So that would be the problems that I have. But in terms of all of the other markers, I'm tracking with it.
Could the person be the architect of the AI?
It could be, yeah.
So it's still a he, but the instrumentation of how, I mean, we all saw during COVID.
I was just going to make a COVID analogy. Yeah, if you and I are tracking, it doesn't actually have to be sentient. It has to be close enough to being sentient to work on what we want. The same with COVID. It wasn't an actual pandemic. And the designers knew that. They couldn't make a pandemic because they would die too. It had to be close enough to act on what we wanted, to panic, to Netflix and chill, and all of that.
Remember, why was it that we had to shut the world down? They had run algorithmic models, which are, proto-nascent versions of what we're describing here. Okay, they had run virtual models, like the IHME model from the University of Washington, for example, from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation there. They had run these virtual models saying that this was going to happen. And therefore, because the metaverse told us in anticipation of a future events, prophesying, if you will, right? Because the machines prophesied that things were going to occur. We then had to act as humans in anticipation that they were prophesying accurately, even though their calculations turned out to be true absolutely nowhere in the end. Right?
So much about what we're talking about today.
And we all listened, and everybody did what they told us to do.
Before we even knew this question was coming up, Steve, your walk through the neighborhood, the fact that there's no yard signs points exactly to this. We used to be autonomous creatures. Here, maybe I'm not politically active all the time, but I'm a citizen, damn it. I'm going to go out and stake my claim. Now, none of them, because I'm binary code now. Just put me into the system. That's it. We want this. So it doesn't actually have to be fully sentient. It has to be close enough that it's a fraudulent implication that we can buy into it. And we want it so bad.
And here I can be anything I want to be. Any gender I want to be, any personality I want to be. In the virtual world, no woman ever says no. All right. I can be fulfilled as a woman. I'll be perfectly fulfilled without a man or any children, or I'll get the man and children that I missed out on in real life. Right? Okay.
Remember Dennis Miller?
I find meeting here.
When we get virtual reality, it's going to make crack look like Sanka.
Yeah, the Dennis Miller line.
We want this.
Okay. I think I'm a buy in that. I think it's plausible then. Okay.
All right, moving on. John Baxter is next, who says the people tisking about libs of TikTok for their tactics don't seem to realize or purposefully overlooking that the people being exposed are the same people who would have cheered if Kyle Rittenhouse was shot and killed in Wisconsin in 2020 during those riots.
I'm going to pull a Todd and come off the top right. They don't realize that you're tisking at people who are fine with Donald Trump being shot and killed because they view him as a proxy for you. All right. No one was advocating the assassination of Donald Trump because he cameoed in Home Alone 2. All right. No one was advocating the assassination of Donald Trump because he was too mean on his reality TV show. No one was advocating the assassination of Donald Trump because he had too many championship fights at Trump Palace. You see what I'm saying? What was the advocating? The advocating of the assassinating of Trump is because he is conjoined to people like us. Whether you like that or not, that's the reality. He is conjoined to people like us. Vis-a-vis, therefore, hence, heretofore, in conclusion, if the advocating of Trump's assassination is because he is seen as being conjoined and aligned with us, by extension, they're also therefore saying what? They are fine and okay and approve of the assassination of us. And I have no idea how someone's not capable of doing this math. I really don't.
It's worse than that. Do you want me to go there?
Yeah, go there.
It's worse than that. Killing people like Donald Trump as a proxy for us, the math that you just laid out, they are fine with that. It makes them happy. It's not the thing that makes them happiest, though. The thing that makes them happiest is subjugating and controlling us.
Correct.
That's what makes them happiest.
I thought folks going out and being a part of this Libs of TikTok purge was like one of the most encouraging things I've seen in a long time.
I completely agree.
I was like, finally.
I had the opposite reaction. Well, all she's doing is getting people at Home Depot. You're missing the point. This thing is filtered. We're way over the rainbow, guys. Way over the rainbow here. Okay. And we are far down the rabbit hole if this stuff is no longer just confined to Twitter grifts and talking points for Joy Reid, okay, and fever dreams for Cal Berkeley or Ivy League University faculty meetings. If a freaking morbidly obese cat lady clerk at Home Depot is signing on, who's shopping at Home Depot, guys? The people wearing masks at home in their cars by themselves? No. Well, we can just Zoom work forever from home. Are not shopping at Home Depot, guys. Who's shopping at Home Depot, folks? We are. If this thing has filtered down into the water table, that Home Depot clerks are like, I'm totally fine just seeing that my customers getting killed. You've missed the forest through the trees here.
Yes. Get busy living or get busy dying, you damn fools.
It's not. All she did was take out Home Depot clerks to, holy bleep, Home Depot clerks think like this? Which means there's literally nowhere in America you could go that you wouldn't run into somebody, potentially, who thinks like this. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That the days of actual safe spaces where we could just be Americans and not know what everybody thinks about politics all the time, okay, and not talk about it it's funny, in the era when everybody put a sign up in the yard, politics was actually talked about a lot less at public events, and nobody really, outside of those, it was a season, like a holiday, okay? It's political season, here's what I think, all right? It's Christmas, I have a tree. Mr. Manischewitz next door has a menorah, okay? I mean, it's a season. And then you didn't put stuff up in January and February. You didn't fly trans flags, okay? The fact, now that it's never ending, now no one wants to bring it up at all. That's a bad sign. That means all this stuff is underneath the surface. Yeah. An election is supposed to be how we get this, in a way, kind of the purge. It's what our founders created so that we would kill each other at ballot boxes and have civil wars there and not out in the actual streets. Or nowadays, the streets are the virtual world that we were just talking about. All right. Now we're not doing it where it is supposed to be done. And now we're doing it in the places where we will actually infect the water table of the overall culture. We'll poison everything with it. So you're looking at it backwards. It's backwards. Okay. It's not all libs of TikTok did was take out Home Depot clerks. You have it backwards. It was, holy crap. I can't even go to Home Depot anymore and just shop there and not wonder if the person there thinks I should be put in a camp. We're more screwed than I thought. You have it backwards.
This is why Jesse Kelly's right. And it was proof once again. You don't have the stomach for the deportations that need to happen, because as soon as it starts, I get all the feels now, and this is just the beginning of what needs to happen. And already, people on our side are putting the pause button. Where would you yet be struck?
All right, for some whiplash, let's do a lightning round here. We've gotten through about a third of these in an hour.
All right, before we do that, I got to talk about Freedom Chamber really quick, if you're okay with that. Because they're trying to build, again, the theme here today with our partners, Parallel Economy, they're trying to build the parallel to the Chamber of Commerce that would just, they're fine with 43 Egyptians, hundreds of Chinese, and 50 plus people from India coming across the border to Southern California. All right, they're totes fine with it, which is the main reason why this has been allowed for as many years as it has. So we need a counter to them, and that's your Freedom Chamber. If you are a small or mid-sized business owner, they want to help you network with the like-minded to grow the pro-American business network, an alliance of owners that share your values, so you can find out what the Bible means when it says the triple braided cord is tougher to break. This is a dynamic, innovative organization that wants to provide comprehensive support, robust resources, and exclusive networking opportunities for us to build the parallel economy, and this is a key component of that. If you want to join today, go to freedomchamber.net. Again, that's freedomchamber.net, and join American businesses across all commercial sectors at freedomchamber.net.
All right, we're going to go this way. American Rohirrim says, in true Gen X fashion,
Nice
Steve
name.
is a wandering soul of lingo. In one sense, he'll use bet, immediately followed by mobile phone, which no one has said in 30 years.
You just described what life is like when you're 50 years old. But yes.
Sure.
Okay. You think you're cool, you're not. On the other hand, you're more tuned in than the younger generations want to admit. You're somewhere in between.
Sure. Bye.
So I'll buy.
Riff McKay says the House will solve the Trump assassination mystery and all those involved will be brought to justice.
I know that this is snarky. I know. And that's why I'm buying it. Okay. Because I know that this was meant, this has been received in the spirit in which it was delivered.
Correct.
So buy. Yes.
Colton O'Halloran says Big Mike somehow makes his or her way onto the Democrat nomination ticket.
So
I'm going to sell two. I'm going to sell two. I mean, Big Mike's on top or nothing. Big Mike's is not Kamala's bottom. Okay. And that's why they're considering Pete Buttigieg, because he's the consummate
they're
bottom.
controlling all of this anyways, and they're doing it from like a yacht and God only knows where from their cell phone.
Right, where they don't have to take any scrutiny, any blowback. They don't have to have anybody looking into their finances because they have become some of the wealthiest people in the country in the last 5 years. Okay, they're living like at an Aaron Spelling-like mansion on Martha's Vineyard right now, guys. They're getting the best of both worlds. They get to be the Charlie Angel's voice on the intercom, and no one. But the face is never seen. Yep. Yeah.
All right, Brian Raper has this: 4 steps to Kamala presidency, or President Kamala. Number 1, historic PR campaign to boost polling and favorables. Number 2, pick Mark Kelly as the VP in Maricopa County.
I hate Brian already because he's 2 for 2.
3, Fortify in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, where it's already been done. And number 4, Kamala has no fewer than 285 electoral
Brian
votes.
is banned from ever submitting ever again. That's too good.
I know.
That's 2 on the money. I hate you, okay, and admire you at the same time, because that is 100% how they could or will try to pull this off. And don't you put that on me, Ricky Bobby, okay? I mean, you have ruined my weekend, and it's only Wednesday, Brian, all right? You are banned and may not submit anymore. You're frankly too smart, and I that's too much intelligence. I'm not able emotionally to process that right now. I need you to rub my belly. Okay, it's not nearly as ample as it used to be, but it is still prodigious. I need you to rub my belly, and I need you to tell me it's going to be okay. Okay? And maybe end it with a bottom tap. I don't need that. All right? You're fired.
Bye.
All right, this will make you feel better. David Negley says, rather than pushing for further demoralization of the Democrats, Republicans will let off the gas up to the election and snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
David, you strike me as someone that has been following politics longer than the last 10 minutes.
Todd?
I'll sell. I mean, they may lose this thing, but I don't think it's because they're going to let off the gas.
I mean, the Republicans in Congress could be they could be canceling the August recess, holding hearings on all these things, going to war, driving news cycles with these things. That they're not. That seems like, now if your position is, Steve, if that's your definition of let off the gas, their foot was never on said gas, so they can't let it off, okay, because that's their default setting, then you're right, and I'll buy.
I think their more likely setting is just not adequately knowing what time it is.
Okay.
Jacob Connor says Governor Mike DeWine will fill Vance's Senate seat with John Kasich, whose dad was a mailman.
That's great. Bye. That is great. Well,
3 in a row.
That's
3 in a row.
Man, you thought Steve thought that was up with people just a couple submissions ago. That's
There are some more optimistic takes later on.
We're getting through. Stay black, Vanta black.
We are getting through the Vanta black now. S. Born Again says Trump will have the most votes in the history of this country and still lose.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, so.
To quote the great prophet Vince Lombardi, what the hell is wrong with you people?
We have people just not turn out what we've seen on both sides.
But no, that's not a believable. That won't happen. That's not a believable narrative. They can't sell that. That's a sell. Okay. They can't sell that.
Jeff Bayer says to make college football 25 more realistic, it should have a feature where the athletic director holds a press conference at halftime to announce which Olympic sport will be eliminated next.
I mean, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Would you play that game, Todd? If it had that feature?
I would not play it, but I thought this was supposed to be a realistic game. Is it or isn't it?
If it's in the game, it's in the game. Yes. I love that. I'll buy. That's very snarky. I like it.
I love this from Dave. Over 50% of Democrats would say it's okay to cheat in elections in order to save democracy.
Oh, 10,000%, brother.
It's okay to cheat in elections in order to save democracy.
For sure.
I mean, how many of them said it was okay to take the children away from people that wouldn't take the COVID jab or put them in prison?
Yep.
I think, wasn't the number something like 25, 30%, if I remember right? It was something like that. Okay. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a precious democracy after all.
Yep.
It's very precious. Yes.
Free People
as in my precious.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Free People says DeSantis rallies Florida voters to reject Amendment 4, which would enshrine abortion in the Florida Constitution.
This has to be a buy.
Yeah.
I think people don't understand. If you're a pro-lifer and you're demoralized by what you just saw at the convention, if the amendment in Florida passes, you're toast. We are toast. We will not have political clout or capital for the foreseeable future. I mean, if you can turn Florida bright red and have a swing to the point that Republicans have a 1 million voter advantage in Florida now, stop and think about that. They were in a deficit when DeSantis took over. It's now a 1 million voter registration advantage in Florida. For the first time in our lives, Todd, we're not even talking about Florida as a battleground state.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time this century, we're not making jokes about hanging chads and when will the vote come in from Broward. We're not even doing that. It's just off the board, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that, and after the governor signed the toughest pro-life law in American history, okay, last year, if on top of those two things, they come out and get, because this needs a 60% threshold to pass, they get a super majority of votes for that, which means, because Trump is probably winning the state by what? 5 to 8, which in Florida is a landslide in a presidential election. Okay. That also therefore means a lot of Republicans are voting for Donald Trump and voting that we should have no restrictions and kill babies whenever we want. There'll be no clout left. The pro-life movement industry, big baby, whatever the hell you want to call it, is toast. It'll be nothing other than a professional march organizer in January. Not like as a criticism of the strategy. You know, like officially. Like all it will do is just hold a march in January. Officially, it'll do nothing else other than that. That is a must win. That has to happen. So I'm going to buy because there's just no other alternative. We'll come back. The prophet of woe and lamentation. This is a great segue. He won't be letting us down now after the last few submissions we just had. All right, Daniel Horowitz is next. Well, as we lament what has become of and then what to do about much of the university system in this country, there is always a remnant, and let us never forget, there's always somebody that has not taken the knee to bail yet, as the prophet Elijah says. And when it comes to universities that have yet to bow that knee, among the leaders, if not the leader, our friends over at Hillsdale College, and they're celebrating Independence Month here in July. And they want to let you watch an inspiring portrayal of Thomas Jefferson as he reflects on the meaning of the Declaration of Independence in a letter that he wrote late in his life. If you want to watch this video, for example, I know there's a lot of homeschoolers in this audience. I would imagine this would be an excellent, just kind of a summertime, check-in with the kids, if you're doing that. And frankly, if you've got your kids in the government schools, you definitely want to be doing that summertime check-in with this video. All right. So go to daceforhillsdale.com if you want to see it. That's FOR. Daceforhillsdale.com. You can watch this inspiring video there. Also, they'll give you a free commemorative copy of the Declaration of Independence as well. All from our friends at Hillsdale at daceforhillsdale.com. Again, that's daceforhillsdale.com. Let's welcome in, speaking of friends, the one and only prophet of woe and lamentation himself, Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Doing all right, Steve. I'm just waiting for you to advertise for the Hillsdale of political parties.
Be nice to have one of those right about now. I mean, Todd, can I say something that you said to me during one of the breaks here a few minutes ago, if you don't mind? Todd said, most of your career you spent lamenting the fact that we needed to be rid of and it had needed a replacement for the Republican Party. And right now, we could probably use what the Republican Party was intended to be more than ever before. And that's, I think, a good lament for where we are. Along those lines, I want to play a video from Fox News this morning and get your reaction. Here it is.
She's not well read. She doesn't read the briefing material or any of that information.
So to your point, Ainsley, about right now, it's the honeymoon stage, and people are like, oh, let's take a look at Kamala Harris. Well, we have taken a look, so all eyes are on her. So let's just go through her various jobs in her adult life and talk a little bit about how she's done, because it does come down to her on the issues. And when she was vice president, there were record migrant encounters, as the so-called borders are. The last two Border Patrol chiefs say Harris has not spoken to them, as Ainsley mentioned. She pushed the envelope of the administration's messaging on the Israel-Gaza conflict and called for a ceasefire in March, said anti-Israel protesters on college campuses were showing exactly what the human emotion should be as a response to Gaza. Maybe that's not, she's not meeting with Bibi. And a leading voice inside the administration advocating for forgiving student debt.
Right. Also, look at foreign policy. She was looking to advocate. Went to Europe to stop the Russian invasion. How did that go? Supported campus protests on Gaza. Tell me how that's profitable, or how the American Jewish audience is going to feel as though that resonates. That might be an outward attempt and maybe an homage to the Michigan voters.
All right. She was also a senator, and as a senator, she applauded the L.A. mayor's decision to slash police funding after the George Floyd death. She helped raise funds to bail rioters out of jail in 2020. Remember that summer?
Tweet still out there.
Yeah, original co-sponsor of the non-binding resolution defining the Green New Deal. She's all into the environment. And she's pushed fracking ban. How's that going to work in the Rust Belt states? How's it going to work in Pennsylvania during her 2019 White House run, even though she did try to walk it back when she was Biden's running mate? And then in 2018, she said we need to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it is being administered.
Well, they did. And they gutted it. And now we have no way of following up on these would-be criminals. And then supported health care for illegal immigrants. She's on camera multiple times saying everyone in this country should get free health care. I don't care who you are.
Let's go to the beginning of her career when she was a prosecutor, and then she was attorney general in California. During her first 3 years as a district attorney, San Francisco's conviction rate jumped from 52 to 67%. She opposed legalization of marijuana in 2010, but views changed over the years, declined to pursue the death penalty against the man who murdered a San Francisco police officer. Under her tenure as AG, the state passed controversial Prop 47, which made retail theft under $950 a misdemeanor. We're seeing the effects of that right now. The California GOP recently blamed her for that. We just laid out from senator to attorney general, prosecutor, as well as vice president.
So I'll tell you
there is a wealth of information when it comes to Kamala Harris.
It's her record.
Her record. You can attack that. All these other attacks are just unnecessary. It's going to tick voters off. Right. It's going to make this a identity politics race. And if you decide to do that, you're going to lose. If you start attacking her based on being DEI and all the other stuff like that, you're going to turn voters off, especially, and Look, I understand it. Biden set the stage for it, saying, hey, I'm only going to select a black woman. But you never want to make, when the GOP is gaining ground in black America, for that to be the one thing that you're attacking on. There's a lot of stuff we just laid out.
Well, and right now, she is in the honeymoon phase, as we have talked about. Now you know a little more about her personal record.
Can you explain to me, what is this obsession? I want to make it very clear. I wanted to win before July 13th. I said all along I was going to support Trump and vote for him if he was the nominee. Now, my investment level personally in this since July 13th has gone up exponentially because I kind of view them shooting at him as a proxy for the fact they'd like to shoot at me. Okay? But this is a long-term lament that I have. I read yesterday that blazetv and Susie Wiles, if you guys don't know who those two people are, they run Trump's campaign, are contemplating attacking Kamala from the left on crime, that she was too hard on it. What is this obsession with, can we get 3, 4, 5% more of people who represent maybe 12% of the electorate in any given cycle, as opposed to no focus or obsession on what to do with suburbans who make up 1/3, minimum 1/3 of the electorate every cycle, regardless of the environment? Can you explain this to me? And do you have an answer, Daniel, beyond, you know what? The poor boomers have been called racist their entire lives, and that's who primarily watches Fox and these channels. And they're just bound and determined before they get called home by the Lord to prove they're not racists. And so that is just like a generational bias to them. That would actually make sense to me. That'd be a normal human reaction, because strategically this makes no sense at all. And I don't understand it. Can you make sense of it?
You know, Steve, I was getting worried there. You would make me agree with Fox News for once, because, you know, I was starting to agree with it. Wow, you know, these are good lines of attacks. And more or less, I do agree with the notion that we should make this about policy and actually create moments like canceling the August recess and getting into session while the DNC is going on and voting no border, no budget, no border, no budget, again and again. But then there was one thing that wasn't like the others. Then they went on to that other slide. I was like, and then not only that, here's another radical thing she did. Prosecutions went up, and
right,
you know, she supported the death penalty. It's like, okay, one of these things is not like the other. Steve, what you're seeing, and look, there's nothing new under the sun. We've experienced this our entire lifetime. It was true pre-Trump Republican Party. It's true now. Nothing has changed. The conservative media, if you want to even call them conservative, they don't know how to wipe their rear ends without the liberal media. Okay, so if you didn't have Democrats or the media taking a position or making an argument at a given time, and they're on an island in a vacuum and they have to articulate, what is it you believe? What is it you want to accomplish? They literally couldn't do it. And that's a problem in our industry, by the way. They only understand how to think as a ricochet off the other side. So sometimes you'll be reactionary and needlessly go like in the opposite direction, but kind of come full circle. And then other times you're so obsessed with their way of thinking that you apply it to your way of doing things. So I've experienced DEI in Republican primaries all the time. I mean, the only thing worse than liberal racial pandering is conservative racial pandering. The minute you get someone in a primary in, let's say, a deep red area or district who is black, immediately he's a black conservative, regardless of whether he is conservative. He may be, but often not. And then now we're stuck with a bad candidate just because of what? The color of his skin, everything we hated about the left. So there's this weird obsession. And I think Steve, in my opinion, it's not rooted only in race. I think there is a certain idea that there's a moral superiority of being non-white. And even though Republicans are now closer to the position of outwardly in a funny aesthetic way making fun out of it and voicing displeasure about it, but internally they still believe in that. But I think it's broadly just the fact that the way they think about issues is to shadow box the way of thinking that is promulgated by the left. But to bring it back to electoral politics, here's the one thing you need to know. Trump won the slimmest of victories in 2016, and he lost, in one of the slimmest of electoral losses in 2020. Right. So those are within 2016, 2020 are the contours of what will be won or lost in a very small margin. Mm-hmm. And in 2016, Trump won the suburban vote. OK, what's defined in the exit polls as suburban vote. It's about 50% of the pie. The other 50 is divided between, let's say, 30% urban, 20% rural. Trump won it by 4 points. OK, 4 years later, he lost it by 2. That's where the difference is. That's where the election is won or lost. In 2020, Trump won. There's a lot of talk about unmarried women voting by Saddam Hussein margins for the Democrats. Mm-hmm. They are what they are. You're not going to change them. married men is really where the base of the Republican Party is. Married women is what you really have to improve and can improve upon based on the issues, such as locking up criminals.
Correct.
You know,
yep.
Your daughters are safe. The Lake and Riley sort of narrative that I think they did well at the RNC. If only they would run that sort of campaign as a hammer into an anvil of a congressional, legislative, and budget fight, government shutdown fight leading right up to the election, so the Democrats don't capture the narrative for the next 2 months, which they will if you don't do anything dramatic like that. But anyway, Trump won the married female vote by 4 points. I think that's where it's criminal that we're not doing as well. Not every suburban white woman is like the transing woman with the mask on. You know, that's a stereotype of the Democrat base. There are a lot of people that because of his personality, there's something preventing them from moving to the Republican Party. Make it about the issues, not about personalities. Mm-hmm. I think the Fox host was right about that. But then obsessing about race is landing in the exact same direction.
All right, I want to talk about the Focus on the Family podcast here for a moment, then we'll get back to Daniel to wrap up the show today. If you're looking for encouragement, particularly if you are a Christian and you've got a family, or you want to have a family, and how do we navigate these very difficult times, you're looking for some biblically sound advice on marriage, parenting, that is both relatable, practical, and also interesting. Go to FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. Go to FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. Check out their podcast that's just for you, especially in these challenging times. You can check it out now. Check it out now on your favorite podcast platform, or visit FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com and start making a difference in your family's life today. FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com is where you want to go. So in 1984, that's a generation ago, Ronald Reagan got 9% of the black vote, okay? The idea that the Republicans are making some historic gains. In 2020, Trump got 12%, okay? 12%. This is just a BS talking point. And here's the reality. If Trump had done 2 points better with the married women that you're talking about, just 2, he wins every single state, every single battleground state, and wins election. Wins Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, all of them. Wins them all. If he's just 2 points. What is more likely to happen? To upsell a group of people that historically have been with you, that you're underselling or you're underwhelming with right now, or to continue to 40 years to get 3 points? 40, release a bunch of prisoners, turn all of our programming into, the brothers be flippin', to get 3 points in 40 damn years. We have to win an election this year, or we are going to be really unsure what the next 40 damn years look like. And we're obsessing about a group historically that does not vote our way. Meanwhile, there's another group out there that should be voting our way. We just need to vote our way a little bit more. And all the messaging that we need to get their votes, Daniel, is right there. I'll give you the last word.
I'm with the hillbilly and the outlaw. So that was their messaging. Mm-hmm. And it's just so dumb when you have inflation, invasion, indoctrination, crime, just the border and crime issues you run over and over again. They're taking over your streets. Your daughters aren't safe in college. I mean, again and again, cut the gratuitous bullcrap out and focus on that, and you'll win that. It's very simple. And Steve, there's one more point to that, which is a lot of people in the United States House don't even think that Republicans will retain the House. Why do you think they're struggling now to get 218, much less 225, when, if you remember a decade ago, they were getting 248? And the reason is it's in those districts. So the value add is also in Congress, because, if you win, you lose New York City boroughs by 59 points instead of 61 points, right. It doesn't get you the district.
Yep.
The districts that represent from number 210 to 250, right? They are predominantly, overwhelmingly white suburbia districts. And that's what you're going to have to win back in order to get this breathing room. We talked about how, Mike Johnson says we don't have enough of a majority, so we can't do anything. Well, if you want to grow that majority, we know who you have to appeal to.
I'm looking right now, by the way, real quick, at the top 10 states with in terms of black population. 8 of them are states that either a Democrat could not lose, like Maryland, for example, or a Republican could not lose, like Mississippi. In those two, in the top 10 states, only 2 are even competitive this year at all, or 3, I should say. Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia. 3. Guess what's in every single state? What's in every state? Married women are in every single state.
Yep.
They're in every single state. Married women. And guess what? There's even black married women, guys. I mean, it's amazing. There's the black married women too. They're not just all white.
Parental rights. They're coming for your children.
Correct.
But look, Susie Wiles said, "Screw the Karens. We're for Enrique and Jamal." So. Look, I can't be more pro-Trump than he is himself, and this has always been the problem. But hopefully, with the bait and switch to Kamala, they'll switch up their tactics.
Meaning
and
that fantasy just can't be realized is the hope here.
That's my hope.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Biden had a weakness with the base.
Yep.
And I think it was very illusory, by the way. Because once they get the ground game going, they were always going to convert it over.
Yep.
Now they better change before it's too late.
Great stuff, Daniel. Thank you. We're going to stick around and do the overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we will see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck. Until then, Romans 8:28.